The pizza was getting cold. I stood on the porch of 4417 Willowbrook Lane, a sprawling colonial house in the nicest part of Knoxville, Tennessee, holding a large pepperoni and a 2-liter of Coke. The February wind cut through my thin Domino's jacket, and I could see my breath forming little clouds in the darkness. I rang the doorbell again, 3rd time now. My name is Derek Allen Mercer. I'm 42 years old. 8 months ago, I was the Regional Operations Director at Callahan Manufacturing, overseeing 340 employees across 3 facilities, pulling in $127,000 a year plus bonuses. I had a corner office on the 4th floor, a reserved parking spot with my name on it, and the respect of everyone who worked under me. Now, I deliver pizzas for $9.50 an hour plus tips, driving a 2011 Honda Civic with a cracked windshield and a heater that only works half the time. The door finally opened. An elderly woman stood there, maybe 75, with silver hair pinned up elegantly in the kind of posture that comes from decades of finishing school or old money or both. She was wearing a silk robe and pearl earrings, the kind of person who probably never answered her own door. "Domino's delivery," I said, forcing a smile. "That'll be $23 or 40 sours." She started to reach for her purse, then stopped. She was staring at my face. Not the way people usually look at delivery drivers, that quick, dismissive glance before they grab their food and close the door. She was studying me, her eyes moving across my features like she was searching for something. "Ma'am, you okay?" She didn't answer. Her hand was trembling now. "Those eyes," she whispered. "Dear God, those eyes." "Excuse me." The purse slipped from her fingers and hit the marble floor with a soft thud. Coins scattered. A lipstick rolled toward my feet. "What is your mother's name?" The question hit me like a physical blow. My mother, Caroline Mercer, had been dead for 16 years. Cancer took her when I was 26, and I still thought about her every single day. "Why are you asking about my mother?" "Please." The woman's voice cracked. Tears were forming in her eyes. "I need to know. What was your mother's name?" "Caroline Mercer." The woman made a sound, half gasp, half sob. Her knees buckled, and she grabbed the doorframe to keep from falling. "Eleanor, what's happening?" A man appeared behind her, tall and distinguished, maybe 78 or 80, with a full head of white hair and the kind of weathered face that suggested a life spent making important decisions. He caught the woman, Eleanor apparently, and held her steady. "This boy," Eleanor said, pointing at me with a shaking finger. "Harold, look at his eyes, look at them." The man, Harold, looked at me, really looked. And I watched the same transformation happen on his face that had happened on his wife's. Confusion, recognition, shock. "That's not possible," he said quietly. "I'm sorry," I said, completely lost. "I'm just here to deliver a pizza. I don't know what's happening." Harold reached into his pocket and pulled out a $100 bill. He pressed it into my hand. "Keep the pizza, keep the change." His voice was unsteady. "But I need you to come inside, right now. There's something you need to know." Every instinct told me to leave, to get back in my car and drive away, and forget this weird encounter ever happened. I had 14 more deliveries to make before my shift ended, but something in the old man's eyes stopped me. Something that looked like hope and grief and desperation all mixed together. "What is this about?" "Your mother," Harold said. "Caroline Whitmore. That was her maiden name, wasn't it?" I froze. Nobody knew my mother's maiden name. It wasn't something I talked about, it wasn't something anyone ever asked. "How do you know that?" Harold and Eleanor exchanged a look. The kind of look that married couples develop over decades, the kind that communicates entire conversations without a single word. "Because," Harold said slowly, "Caroline Whitmore was our daughter." The pizza box slipped from my hands. "That's impossible. My mother was an only child. She grew up in foster care. She never knew her biological family. She was taken from us, Eleanor said, tears streaming down her cheeks. 47 years ago, we never stopped looking. We hired investigators. We followed every lead. We spent everything we had trying to find her. And when we finally did, Harold continued, his voice breaking, she was already gone. Cancer. 16 years ago. We were 3 months too late. My head was spinning. This couldn't be real. This was some kind of scam, some elaborate trick. Old people getting confused, mistaken identity, something. I have proof, Harold said, as if reading my mind. Inside, photographs, documents, DNA results from a private investigator who tracked her family tree. We've known about you for 6 years, Derek. We just couldn't find you. You moved so many times, changed jobs, disappeared into the system. And then you showed up on our doorstep, Eleanor whispered. Delivering pizza after all these years, delivering pizza. She started laughing or crying or both. Harold held her tight. Please, he said to me. Come inside. Let us tell you the whole story. I looked back at my car, at the Domino's sign on the roof, at the stack of pizza bags in the back seat waiting for delivery. Then I looked at these two people, these strangers who claimed to be my grandparents, standing in the doorway of their beautiful home with tears in their eyes. I stepped inside. I need to tell you how I ended up delivering pizzas at 42 years old. It starts with love. It always does. I met Vanessa Blake in 2014 at a conference in Atlanta. She was a sales rep for a packaging company. I was there representing Callahan Manufacturing. We ended up at the same hotel bar on the last night, both of us tired and a little drunk and not wanting to go back to our empty rooms. She was beautiful. Not in the obvious way, but in the way that sneaks up on you. Dark hair she was always pushing behind her ear. A laugh that made everyone around her want to laugh too. Eyes that made you feel like whatever you were saying was the most interesting thing she had ever heard. We talked until 2 a.m. that night. Exchanged numbers. Started texting. Within a month, I was driving 3 hours every weekend to see her. Within 6 months, she moved to Knoxville to be with me. We got married in 2016, small ceremony, just family and close friends. I remember thinking as I watched her walk down the aisle that I was the luckiest man alive. For 6 years, I believed that. Vanessa worked in sales at various companies, bouncing around, never quite finding her place. I supported her through 3 job changes, always encouraging, always patient. My salary was enough for both of us. I wanted her to find something that made her happy. In 2021, she landed a position at Whitfield Enterprises, a regional investment firm run by a man named Carter Whitfield. She came home glowing that first day. He's brilliant, Derek, the way he talks about business, about growth, about potential. I've never met anyone like him. I was happy for her. Really, I was. Carter Whitfield was 38, divorced, no kids, old money family, Harvard MBA, the kind of resume that opens doors before you even knock. I met him at a company party that December, shook his hand, made small talk about golf and football. He looked at my wife a little too long, smiled at her a little too warmly, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Vanessa loved me. We had built a life together. The signs started appearing in 2022, late nights at the office, weekend conferences that always seemed to require an overnight stay. New clothes, new perfume, a sudden interest in the gym, and in looking perfect all the time. Work is just demanding right now, she would say. Carter is pushing for growth. We're all putting in extra hours. I believed her because I wanted to believe her, because the alternative was too painful to consider. On February 14th, 2023, I found out the truth. It was Valentine's Day. I had made reservations at Vanessa's favorite restaurant, bought her flowers, even arranged for a couples massage at that spa she loved. I left work early to pick her up, planning to surprise her. I walked into Callahan Manufacturing's lobby at 3:30 p.m., flowers in hand, feeling like the romantic hero of my own story. Then I noticed the security guards. Not our usual guards. New ones wearing different uniforms, standing at every exit like they were expecting trouble. "Mr. Mercer." My assistant, Tanya, intercepted me before I reached the elevator. Her face was pale. "You should go home." "What? Why? What's happening?" "There's been an acquisition this morning. The announcement just went out." My blood went cold. "Acquisition? By who?" Tanya wouldn't meet my eyes. "Whitfield Enterprises. Carter." "Whitfield is the new owner." I pushed past her, ignoring her protests, and took the elevator to my floor. The fourth floor, where my corner office overlooked the parking lot, where I had spent 7 years building something I was proud of. My office door was open. Carter Whitfield was sitting behind my desk in my chair, looking through my things like he owned them, because, I realized with a sickening lurch, he did, and standing next to him, her hand on his shoulder, was Vanessa. "Derek," she said, not even having the decency to look surprised. "You're early. What is this?" Carter stood up slowly, buttoning his suit jacket. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my monthly salary, and his smile was the kind that made you want to break things. "This is business, Derek. Callahan was undervalued. I saw an opportunity. Nothing personal." "Nothing personal? You bought my company?" "I bought a company. You just happened to work here." He walked around the desk and put his arm around Vanessa, although, I have to admit, the fringe benefits were a nice bonus. Vanessa actually smiled. I stared at her. This woman I had loved for 9 years. This woman I had supported through every setback, encouraged through every doubt, held through every difficult night. "How long?" I asked. "Does it matter?" "How long, Vanessa?" She sighed, like I was being tedious. 2 years, since right after I started at Whitfield. 2 years, 730 days of lies, of pretending, of coming home to me after being with him. "I want a divorce," she said. "Carter's lawyers will be in touch. I'm sure we can make this quick and painless." "Painless?" Carter laughed. He actually laughed. "Come on, Derek, you had to know this was coming. Vanessa's a 10. You're what, a 6 on a good day? She was always going to trade up eventually." He leaned down and kissed her. Right there in my office, in front of me, his hand sliding around her waist like he was claiming property. "Oh, and you're fired," he said when he finally pulled away. "Effective immediately. Security will escort you out." "You can't fire me. I have a contract." Had a contract with Callahan Manufacturing, which no longer exists. Read the fine print. He tossed something onto the desk. My nameplate. Derek Mercer, Regional Operations Director. "Enjoy the unemployment line." 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. New guys, Whitfield's guys. "Mr. Mercer, we need you to come with us." I looked at Vanessa one last time, searching for something, anything that resembled the woman I had married. She was checking her phone. They escorted me out through the lobby, past the employees I had worked with for 7 years, past people who wouldn't meet my eyes, past everything I had built. When I reached my car, I sat there for an hour. Just sat there, staring at the building, trying to understand how my entire life had collapsed in 15 minutes. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. Carter's lawyers were as good as advertised. Vanessa got the house, most of our savings, even my retirement accounts. The prenup I had stupidly signed when I thought love was enough protected nothing. I was left with $8,400, a car with 127,000 miles on it, and no job. At 42 years old, with a gap in my resume and references that suddenly went unreturned, I discovered that the job market has no mercy for middle-aged men who have been publicly humiliated by their replacements. I applied to 47 positions in 3 months. Got 2 interviews, 0 offers. The savings ran out in September. By October, I was delivering pizzas. And that is how I ended up standing on the porch of 4417 Willowbrook Lane on a cold February night, holding a pepperoni pizza, staring at a woman who claimed my dead mother was her stolen daughter. The Whitmore house was everything my mother never had: crystal chandeliers, antique furniture, oil paintings that probably cost more than most people's houses. A grand staircase swept up to a second floor I could barely see. Fresh flowers sat on every surface, and the whole place smelled like money and old elegance. But Harold and Eleanor Whitmore weren't interested in showing off their wealth. They led me to a small study off the main hallway, a cozy room lined with books and photographs, and sat me down on a leather sofa that had clearly seen decades of use. Eleanor brought tea. Her hands were still shaking. "Start from the beginning," I said. "Please, I need to understand." Harold settled into an armchair across from me. He looked exhausted, like the weight of 47 years was pressing down on his shoulders. In 1977, Eleanor and I had a daughter, Carolyn Elizabeth Whitmore. She was the most beautiful baby you have ever seen. Red hair like Eleanor's mother. Blue eyes that seemed to look right through you. He paused, collecting himself. I was a different man then, ambitious, ruthless even. I had just taken over Whitmore Industries from my father, and I was determined to expand it, make it bigger, more powerful, more profitable. Whitmore Industries? The name was vaguely familiar. Defense contracts mostly, manufacturing components for military equipment. We were worth about $40 million when I took over. I grew it to nearly $200 million in 5 years. He shook his head. But success attracts enemies. In 1978, I made a deal that angered some very dangerous people. I will not go into details, but there were threats, credible threats against my family. Eleanor reached over and took his hand. We hired security, armed guards, surveillance systems, the best protection money could buy, but it was not enough. Harold's voice dropped. Caroline was taken from her nursery on March 15, 1978. She was 11 months old. The kidnapper got past 3 layers of security, took her from her crib, and vanished. "We received a ransom demand," Eleanor said softly. $5 million. Harold paid it immediately, every cent. "They never returned her," Harold finished. "We waited at the drop point for hours, days. She never came." I sat in stunned silence. My mother, the woman who raised me with nothing, who worked 2 jobs to put food on our table, who died in a county hospital because she couldn't afford better care, had been kidnapped from a mansion as an infant. "The FBI investigated for years," Harold continued. "Private investigators, psychics, anyone who claimed they could help. We spent over $20 million searching for her. Nothing. What happened to her? How did she end up in foster care? We pieced it together eventually, after she passed." Eleanor wiped her eyes. The kidnapper, a man named Vincent Greco, was connected to organized crime. He was supposed to deliver Caroline to someone overseas, a buyer. But he got greedy, tried to keep the ransom for himself. His employers found out, they killed him. But by then, Caroline had already been abandoned, left at a fire station in rural Kentucky. No identification, no records, nothing. She was placed in the foster system under a new name, Caroline Mercer. Mercer was the name of her first foster family, Harold added. She kept it, never knew her real identity. I thought about my mother, how she always said she felt like something was missing, how she used to stare at wealthy families in restaurants with this strange, sad expression, how she told me once that she dreamed about a house with a big staircase and a woman singing lullabies. She had been remembering. Some part of her, buried deep, had remembered this place. "We found her in 2006, Eleanor said. A private investigator finally made the connection through DNA databases. By then she was married, had a son, had you. Why didn't you contact her?" Harold's face crumpled. "We were going to. We had plane tickets. We were going to fly to Tennessee and meet her, meet our grandson." He paused. "The investigator called us the day before our flight. Caroline had been diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. She died 3 months later. "We were 3 months too late," Eleanor whispered. 47 years of searching, and we were 3 months too late. I felt tears on my cheeks. I hadn't even noticed I was crying. "We tried to find you after that," Harold said. "But you were in a dark place. You moved constantly, changed jobs, fell off the grid. We hired people to look for you, but you were like a ghost." I was struggling, I admitted. After Mom died, I kind of lost my way for a while. Took me years to get my life together. "And now, here you are," Eleanor said, reaching out to touch my face. "Standing on our doorstep, our grandson, our Caroline's son." She started crying again, not the delicate tears of a wealthy woman, but deep, racking sobs that shook her whole body. Harold moved to comfort her, but she waved him off. "I am fine. I am just so happy." She looked at me through her tears. "You have her eyes, you know. Your mother's eyes. I recognized them the moment I saw you." I did not know what to say. My entire identity, everything I thought I knew about myself, had just been rewritten in the space of an hour. "There is more," Harold said carefully, "if you are willing to hear it." "More?" He stood and walked to a large painting on the wall. Behind it was a safe. He entered a combination, opened it, and pulled out a thick folder. "When we realized we might never find Caroline, we made arrangements. Legal arrangements." He set the folder on the table between us. "Everything we have, everything we have built, was meant to go to her, and since she is gone, it goes to her descendants." "Her descendants? You mean me. You are our only grandchild, Derek, our only heir." I opened the folder. Legal documents, financial statements, property deeds, the numbers blurred together, but I caught enough to understand. This says Whitmore Industries is worth, currently valued at $890 million, give or take. Harold sat back down heavily. "We sold the defense contracts years ago. The company now focuses on renewable energy, sustainable technology, Eleanor's passion project. And this trust fund, established in 1978, the day after Caroline was taken. It has been growing ever since, currently holds approximately $127 million in diversified investments." I couldn't breathe. This is some kind of joke. "No joke." Harold's voice was firm. "We have waited 47 years to give this to our family. Caroline should have had it. She should have grown up here, gone to the best schools, never wanted for anything. Instead, she spent her life in poverty because a criminal stole her from us." He leaned forward. "We cannot give her those years back. We cannot undo what was done. But we can make sure her son never struggles again, that our great-grandchildren, if you have them, never know the kind of hardship Caroline endured. This is too much. I came here to deliver a pizza, and instead you found your family." Eleanor smiled through her tears. "Some might call that fate. I call it a miracle." I looked at the documents again, at the numbers that represented more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, at the legal language that made me heir to a fortune I never knew existed. And I thought about Carter Whitfield, sitting in my office, kissing my wife, telling me to enjoy the unemployment line. He thought he had destroyed me. He had no idea who I really was. I did not accept the inheritance immediately. I know that sounds insane. A man delivering pizzas for $9.50 an hour, being offered $127 million, and he hesitates, but I needed time. Time to process, time to verify, time to understand what was happening. Harold and Eleanor understood. They gave me space, but they also gave me their personal attorneys, contact information, and encouraged me to do my own due diligence. I spent 2 weeks investigating them. I hired a lawyer with the last of my savings, a young woman named Patricia Chen, who specialized in estate law. She dove into the Whitmore family history, the corporate records, the trust documents, everything. "It is all legitimate," she told me after 10 days of research. Harold and Eleanor Whitmore are exactly who they claim to be. The kidnapping is documented in FBI files from 1978. The private investigators' reports tracking Caroline Mercer are thorough and verifiable. The DNA evidence matches. And the inheritance? The trust is ironclad. You are the sole beneficiary. Everything they told you is true. I called Harold that night. I believe you, I said. I would like to meet again, properly, this time. The next 3 months were a whirlwind. I moved out of my dingy apartment and into the guest house on the Whitmore estate. Not the main house, not yet. I needed to take things slowly. But I also needed to stop delivering pizzas, and Harold and Eleanor would not hear of me living in squalor while we got to know each other. We spent hours together. Eleanor showed me photo albums from Caroline's first year of life, the 11 months before she was taken. Videos of her crawling, laughing, reaching for toys. My mother as a baby, and a life that had been stolen from her. She looks so happy, I said one evening, watching a shaky home video of Caroline's first Christmas. She was happy, Eleanor replied. For 11 months, she was the happiest baby in the world. Harold taught me about the business. Whitmore Industries had evolved significantly since its defense contract days. Now it focused on solar technology, wind farms, sustainable manufacturing. They employed over 2,000 people across the Southeast. Your mother would have run all of this eventually, Harold said during a tour of their main facility. She had my brain for business and Eleanor's heart for people, the perfect combination. You do not know that. You barely knew her. I knew her for 11 months, and in those 11 months I saw everything I needed to see. He put his hand on my shoulder. I see the same things in you, Derek. You are more like her than you realize. I wanted to argue, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the way he looked at me. Maybe it was the sincerity in his voice. Maybe it was the simple fact that for the first time in my life someone was telling me I was enough, that I belonged somewhere, that I was family. The formal inheritance process took 4 months. Lawyers, accountants, financial advisors, document after document, signature after signature. The IRS got involved naturally. Estate taxes, gift taxes, forms I had never heard of and would never fully understand. But by July, it was official. I was Derek Allen Whitmore Mercer, heir to the Whitmore fortune, worth approximately $127 million in liquid assets, with controlling shares in a company valued at nearly $900 million. The money changed everything and nothing. I bought a house, a modest place in a nice neighborhood. Not a mansion, not a statement piece, just a home, 4 bedrooms, a big backyard, the kind of place I had always imagined raising a family in back when I thought I would have a family. I bought a new car, but not an extravagant one, a reliable SUV that would last for years. I paid off my debts, my student loans, my credit cards. I set up college funds for nieces and nephews I had barely spoken to in years. I donated to the hospital where my mother had died, funding a new wing for cancer patients who could not afford private care. But I did not quit working. Harold offered me a position at Whitmore Industries, something meaningful where I could learn the business from the inside. I accepted. Not for the salary, which I did not need, but for the purpose. I started in operations where my experience at Callahan actually proved useful. Different industry, but the fundamentals were the same. Supply chains, logistics, personnel management. I worked 12-hour days, learning everything I could, and all the while I kept track of Carter Whitfield. Not obsessively, not unhealthily, just awareness. Google alerts, occasional LinkedIn checks, casual conversations with old colleagues who had stayed at the company he stole from me. What I learned was interesting. Callahan Manufacturing, under Carter's leadership, was struggling. Profits were down. Key employees were leaving. The aggressive cost-cutting he had implemented to boost short-term returns was destroying the company's long-term viability. Even more interesting, Whitfield Enterprises itself was in trouble. Carter had overextended, buying companies he could not afford, financing acquisitions with debt he could not service. His investors were getting nervous. The man is a house of cards, Patricia Chen told me when I asked her to look into it. He has maybe 18 months before everything collapses, 2 years at most. I could have left it alone. Let karma do its work. Watched from a distance as Carter Whitfield destroyed himself. But that is not what I wanted. I wanted him to know. I wanted him to see exactly who he had discarded, exactly who he had humiliated, exactly who he had told to enjoy the unemployment line. I wanted justice, and now I had the resources to get it. The Knoxville Business Association's annual charity gala was held in October at the Grand Marriott downtown. Black tie event, $500 a plate, all the local power players pretending to care about whatever cause they were supposedly supporting. Carter Whitfield would be there. He never missed an opportunity to network, to schmooze, to remind everyone how successful he was. I had not attended one of these events since before the divorce. Had not been invited, honestly. When you are delivering pizzas, the Knoxville Business Association does not exactly put you on their mailing list. But Derek Whitmore Mercer, heir to Whitmore Industries, major philanthropist, rising star in the regional business community, that Derek received a gold-embossed invitation hand delivered by courier. I went alone. The ballroom was exactly what you would expect. Crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures, waiters carrying trays of champagne that cost more per glass than I used to make in an hour, men in tuxedos, women in gowns, everyone performing their wealth for everyone else. I moved through the crowd slowly, shaking hands, making small talk. People recognized me now. Or rather, they recognized the Whitmore name, and they wanted to be associated with it. Derek, wonderful to see you. How are Harold and Eleanor? Mr. Mercer, I've been meaning to call about that investment opportunity. Derek, we simply must have lunch. I have some ideas I think you'll find fascinating. I smiled and nodded and said nothing of substance. My eyes were scanning the room, and then I found them. Carter and Vanessa were standing near the bar, holding champagne flutes, laughing at something someone had said. She was wearing a red dress that probably cost thousands. He was in a custom tuxedo that fit him perfectly. They looked happy, confident, untouchable. I walked toward them. It took Carter a moment to recognize me. I had changed in the past year. Better clothes, better haircut, better posture. The confidence that comes from knowing who you are and what you are worth. When recognition finally dawned, his expression was priceless. Confusion, then shock, then something that looked almost like fear. Derek? Carter, Vanessa. I nodded at each of them pleasantly. Lovely event, is it not? Vanessa's champagne glass trembled slightly. What are you doing here? Same thing everyone else is doing. Supporting a worthy cause, making connections, enjoying the evening. I smiled. Although I admit the champagne here is better than what we served at Callahan's holiday parties. But then, you would know that. You own Callahan now. Carter recovered his composure, but I could see the effort it took. You look different. Amazing what happens when you find your footing again. Speaking of which, I heard Callahan's Q3 numbers were disappointing. Down 18% from last year, wasn't it? That must be stressful. His jaw tightened. Where did you hear that? Oh, you know how it is. Business community talks. I took a champagne glass from a passing waiter. I also heard Whitfield Enterprises is having some trouble with its creditors. Something about over-leveraged acquisitions? Risky business model in this economy? I don't know who's been telling you things, but my company is fine. Of course it is. I sipped my champagne. I am sure those banks demanding accelerated repayment are just being cautious. Nothing to worry about. Vanessa stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. How do you know all this? And how are you even here? This event costs $500 a plate, yes. I bought a table, actually. 10 seats. I paused. I gave the other 9 to employees from Callahan's Knoxville facility, the ones you laid off last month to cut costs. Figured they deserved a nice night out. Carter's face went red. What's your game, Derek? What do you want? Want? Nothing from you. I just came to say hello to some old acquaintances. I set down my champagne glass. Although, since we're catching up, I should mention something. I let the pause stretch. I've recently come into some resources. Family money, it turns out. My mother was the daughter of Harold and Eleanor Whitmore. Yes, those Whitmores. Whitmore Industries. You may have heard of them. Vanessa made a small sound. Carter went pale. Anyway, I've been looking for investment opportunities, places to put some capital to work, and I noticed that several of Whitfield Enterprises' creditors are flexible, open to transferring debt obligations to new parties. What are you saying? I'm saying that, as of last week, Whitmore Industries owns approximately $47 million of your debt, Carter. The debt you used to buy Callahan Manufacturing, among other things. The color drained completely from his face. That's not possible. It's very possible. Took some work, but money opens doors. You taught me that, actually. You can't just... There are laws. There are laws about debt purchasing, yes. We followed all of them. Our lawyers are very thorough. I straightened my tie. Now I could call that debt immediately. Force Whitfield Enterprises into bankruptcy. Take Callahan back, along with everything else you own. Vanessa grabbed Carter's arm. Carter, do something. But I'm not going to do that, I continued. Not tonight, anyway. I'm going to give you a choice instead. What kind of choice? Sell Callahan Manufacturing back to its employees. Fair market value. Financed reasonably. No tricks. The people who actually built that company deserve to own it. And if I refuse, then I call the debt tomorrow morning, and I let the courts sort out what's left of your empire. Carter stood frozen. Vanessa was pulling at his arm, whispering urgently, but he was not listening. He was looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time. You were supposed to be nothing, he said quietly. You were a regional manager, a nobody. I was a man who loved his wife and worked hard and tried to do the right thing. You took everything from me because you could, because you thought no one would ever hold you accountable. I stepped closer. You were wrong. I pulled a business card from my pocket and handed it to him. Call my lawyers by Friday. They'll walk you through the employee buyout process. Fair terms, no games. You'll lose Callahan, but you'll keep the rest. That's more than you deserve. I turned to walk away, then paused. Oh, and Vanessa, that house you took in the divorce? The one you've been living in with Carter? I bought the mortgage last month. The bank was happy to sell it. Apparently, you've missed several payments. Her face went white. You have 90 days to find new accommodations. I'd suggest you start looking. I walked away without looking back. Behind me, I heard Vanessa burst into tears. Heard Carter shouting my name, demanding I come back, threatening lawsuits and consequences and everything else he could think of. I kept walking. Through the ballroom, past the ice sculptures and the champagne towers and the people in their expensive clothes performing their expensive lives. Outside, the October air was cool and clean. I stood on the steps of the Grand Marriott and breathed deeply. It was over. Not just the confrontation, but all of it. The anger, the humiliation, the burning need for revenge. It had been satisfied, not through cruelty, not through destruction, but through justice. Carter would sell Callahan to its employees. They would rebuild what he had torn down. The company my father had helped create, that I had helped grow, would survive, and Carter Whitfield would spend the rest of his life knowing that the man he had dismissed as nothing had been his undoing. That was enough. That was more than enough. Carter sold Callahan Manufacturing 3 weeks later. He didn't have a choice. I wasn't bluffing about the debt, and his lawyers confirmed what I already knew. Fighting me would only delay the inevitable and drain whatever resources he had left. The employee buyout went smoothly. 12 of my former colleagues pooled their savings and secured a small business loan to purchase the company. They renamed it Callahan Community Manufacturing, which I thought was a nice touch. I anonymously guaranteed part of their loan. They don't know that, and they never will. Some help is better given quietly. Whitfield Enterprises survived, barely. Carter had to sell off most of his acquisitions to service his remaining debt, including the packaging company where Vanessa had originally worked. He's still in business, technically, but he's no longer the power player he once was, just another mid-tier investor scrambling for deals. Vanessa moved out of my old house before the 90 days were up. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she and Carter split up about 6 months later. Turns out their relationship was built on his success and her ambition, and when the success crumbled, so did they. I don't know where she is now. I don't really care. Harold passed away last spring. He went peacefully, in his sleep, with Eleanor holding his hand. He was 83 years old, and in his final months he often talked about how grateful he was that we had found each other. I spent 47 years grieving for Caroline, he told me a week before he died. But knowing you, loving you, watching you grow into the man you've become, it helped. It didn't erase the grief, but it gave it meaning. I was with him at the end. I held his other hand while Eleanor held the first. The last thing he said was my mother's name. We buried him next to the empty plot that was always meant for Caroline. Someday, when we can manage it emotionally, we're going to have her remains moved there too. She deserves to be with her parents. Even if it took 47 years, even if she never knew them in life, she deserves to rest beside them. Eleanor's doing well, all things considered. She's 80 now, sharp as ever, still involved in the charitable work that has defined her later years. I visit her every Sunday for dinner, just the two of us, and we talk about Caroline, about Harold, about the family we have become. "You know what I love most about you?" she asked me last week over coffee and her famous peach cobbler. "My devastating good looks?" She laughed. "Your mother's sense of humor." "No, what I love most is that you're building something. You could have taken the money and done nothing. Traveled the world, bought fancy things, become one of those useless rich people we both despise. Instead, you're working, creating, making a difference." She's right, I am working. I took over as CEO of Whitmore Industries last year. Eleanor remains chairwoman of the board, but she wanted to step back from daily operations. She said it was time for the next generation to lead. We've expanded significantly. New solar farms in 3 states, a partnership with a major automotive company to develop sustainable battery technology, a foundation in Caroline's name that provides scholarships to kids aging out of the foster care system. That last one matters most to me. My mother spent her childhood bouncing between strangers, never knowing where she came from, never feeling like she belonged. I can't change what happened to her, but I can make sure other kids have better chances, better support, better futures. Last month, we gave out our first round of scholarships. 12 students, full rides to universities across the country. I met each of them personally, shook their hands, told them about the woman the foundation was named for. One girl, 17, about to age out of the system, looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know us." "I'm doing it because someone should have done it for my mother," I said, "and because what we do for others is the only thing that really lasts." She hugged me. This stranger, this kid I'd just met, hugged me like I was family. Maybe that's what family really is, not just blood, not just inheritance, but connection, compassion, the choice to care about someone beyond yourself. I think about that pizza delivery sometimes. What if I had called in sick that night? What if the order had gone to a different driver? What if Eleanor hadn't answered the door, or hadn't looked at my face, or hadn't recognized her daughter's eyes in mine? 1,000 small chances, 1,000,000 tiny moments, all leading to one doorstep on one cold February night. Some people would call it fate, some would call it luck. Eleanor calls it a miracle. I just call it life. Messy, unpredictable, occasionally devastating life, the kind that takes everything from you one day and gives you more than you ever imagined the next. Carter Whitfield thought he had destroyed me. He thought that Valentine's Day confrontation in my office was the end of my story. He was wrong. It was just the beginning. I still have my Domino's jacket. It hangs in my closet between a tailored suit and a casual blazer, a reminder of where I was when everything changed. Sometimes I take it out and look at it, feel the thin fabric, remember the cold February nights and the hot pizza boxes, and the feeling that my life had narrowed to nothing. Eleanor asked me once why I keep it. Because I never want to forget, I told her. Not the struggle, not the shame, not the nights when I wondered if it would ever get better. I keep it because that jacket is part of my story, and my story, all of it, is what made me who I am. She understood. She's wise like that. People ask me sometimes what I would tell my younger self, the version of me who stood in that parking lot after being escorted out of Callahan, watching his whole life crumble. I would tell him, keep going, keep delivering pizzas, keep paying your bills, keep waking up every day and putting one foot in front of the other. Because you don't know what's coming. You can't see the door that's about to open, the family that's waiting to find you, the life that's about to begin. You think this is the end of your story. It's not. It's just the part where everything changes. So here's what I want to ask you. What's your pizza delivery moment? What's the job you took because you had to, the humiliation you endured because there was no other choice, the rock bottom that felt like it would last forever, and here's the real question. What if that moment, that lowest point, is actually leading you somewhere you can't see yet? Tell me in the comments, share your story, because I promise you, someone needs to hear it. And if you know someone who's struggling right now, someone who feels like they've lost everything, share this with them. You never know who might be waiting on the other side of that door.